our minds and hearts, when we choose, like a conduit through which the power of God might run, like electricity through an electrical line, and we have the opportunity, should we choose, to open ourselves that we might be as conduits through which the power runs through us from the mind of God and out into the world. In A Course in Miracles, we are asked why we struggle so hard to attain the wings of a sparrow when the wings of the eagle have been given us already. And that refers to our belief in the powers of the world, and thus our struggle to attain those powers being in spiritual terms themselves false powers. The struggle to attain the false powers, the powers of worldly effect, whether it be money or business or technology, whatever the particular powers of the world that we struggle to attain might be, in the moment of the struggle, we are by definition blocking or interfering with our own capacity to be conduits for the power of the universe. That is not in any way to say that the powers of the world do not have their purpose, because they do, theoretically, when they are used by the mind for the purposes of all good. This, therefore, is not to denigrate the powers of the world, but rather to say that when we are not in struggle to attain them, but rather holding ourselves open to the mystical power which emanates from the invisible realms, that part of the power of the mystical, part of the power of the invisible realms is that we will be led, when it serves the higher plan, to the use of and effortless success at achieving the lower powers. So we needn't struggle for worldly power, and when we do struggle for worldly power, we are actually limiting our power in the world. But it was inevitable that that would be our orientation as long as we are lost in the illusion where we think, as mankind has thought for the last few thousand years at least, that only the world we see with our physical senses is real. It is as though, according to the great metaphysical traditions, it is as though we are lost in a trance on this planet. And we think that what we see with our physical eyes is real, and we think that what we hear with our physical ears is real. And so the world presented to us by our physical senses, we think is all there is. And so we define empowerment by the powers of that world. But what the great esoteric traditions, and actually the great exoteric religions at their heart, at their mystical heart, teach us, the mystical core of Christianity, the mystical core of Judaism, the mystical core of all the great religions, tell the same story. That this world as we know it is a reflection of the state of our fall from higher awareness. And the higher awareness is the awareness of the world which lies beyond this one. And it is as though we are here on a great mission, but we came here. We were not just dropped here. You know, the Course in Miracles says, there is no one on this planet who has not at some point or another felt like an alien here. And the Course in Miracles says the reason we feel like aliens here is because we are. It is as though, and all the great systems of religious truth teach us this on some level, that we came here from the Father being the great invisible realm, first cause, source. And we came here, but we were not just dropped. We have a silver cord that connects us to our home. But what happened was, very, very long ago, people began to believe that they didn't have a connection back. They began to think that they were on this planet. They forgot about the silver cord, and that silver cord constantly enables us to hear our instructions, receive the wisdom and the guidance we need about how to go about living here. And the exodus from paradise, the detour into fear, the fall, so many different ways of putting it, mean that people on this planet forgot. And then theoretically, if you live with enough generations who, if one generation knows that they have this silver cord of connection, and then another generation in any way forgets it, ultimately you have generations on the planet that think the whole idea of the silver cord is ridiculous because they haven't experienced it. And if the whole idea of the silver cord is ridiculous, then the idea of where the silver cord leads to is ridiculous. So that we have become people living on the planet in complete sense of disconnection from our source. And having been disconnected from our source, the stories tell us, we are disconnected from our knowledge of who we are. We are disconnected from our own identity. And so then we are doomed to think that we are merely what this world is and that we are of this world. But the reason it's an experience of doom is because we can never really feel that. Even though the world tells us, well, you are this body here and you're going about all the experiences of this land of false powers, and if you're really lucky, you'll get some of that false power, and then you'll be happy. But none of that ever totally feels right because it isn't right to who we are. So the path of the mystic is the path of one who seeks, as it says in the great religious text, to be in this world but not of this world. To reestablish our connection through that cord, to go back into the invisible realms. Now, according to all the great spiritual teachings of the world, those invisible realms are established through meditation and prayer. Because it is through meditation and prayer that, as we said at the beginning of the prayer tonight, you close your outer eye. You close your outer eye in order to open the inner eye. And you close your outer ear. You enter into silence. You enter into the space where you are not looking at the outer world in order that you might see more clearly the inner world. You close your outer ear, i.e. you enter the silence that you might hear the small, still voice within. Meditation, the purpose of meditation is that we might re-establish contact. Now, as long as we think that this is a metaphor, then it will have the effect of a metaphor in our lives. But when we think of the mystical realms as every bit as real as this room, then something profoundly changes in our lives. And indeed, we begin to experience life in such a way, perhaps, that the invisible realms seem, if anything, more real than this one. The relationship between the two, however, is not that we go to the invisible realms, to the mystical realms, and do not care what happens out there. Rather, we remember why we came here to begin with, and that is to reclaim the earth for the Father. Because earth has become a domain which is cut off from source. So our function is to go back into the cut off regions in order to reconnect it. If all we're going to do is go into the mystical realms and turn away from that realm